Hi everybody and welcome to my Unruly Housewife channel. Today I'm going to show you how to take a boring little vitamin bottle like this, or jar, or whatever you'd call it, and make it into a pretty little star jar bottle like this, with blended clay textures and some inset stars or whatever shapes you'd like to put in, and a matching lid. So I hope you're going to enjoy it, and let's go ahead and look at the clays and things that we're going to need. Here are some of the things you're going to need to make this little project, and obviously you're going to need cutters, or you'll need a star cutter to cut out the star shapes, and I included here a circle cutter because that's going to help with making the lid and tidying up the bottom of the jar. For texturing, I used this sort of toothbrushy thing. It's a tongue brush, I think, I'm not sure, and just a little dotting tool. And I blended my clays together in a way that I learned from Cindy Leeds, your polymer clay tutor, which is to include some of one of the colours in all of the colours, if you see what I mean. And in fact these colours are all blended using different little bits of each other, so that they've all got that kind of DNA about them, you know. So we know the colours will work together even though they're not exactly the same. And I tried to pick some that were dark and dull, and one that was a bit brighter. But of course when I come to do my stars, where I'm going to use this gold clay, which I nearly forgot to include, that's really going to pop against a dark background. So there's that. The other thing I've used to tidy up my jar a little bit around the edges is an extruder. And I don't consider that essential, but if you've got one, now's the time to crack it out. And of course, you're always going to need a blade. Now, in order to cover our bottle or jar, we have to have enough clay to sort of blend together and wrap around it. And also I'd like some left over because I want to put some on the lid. So we're going to need quite a lot of clay. Obviously the colour blends that I showed you weren't the entire amount that I had to do it with. So here's my clay here, and I'll just let you have a bit of a closer look at that. And I've thought about how tall the bottle is in relation to how tall my little mix is going to be. And I've also thought about how far around they're going to reach. Now, I'm not 100% that this is going to be enough, but it's pretty chubby, and the actual covering that we put on the jar is actually quite thin. So I think we're going to have enough. And I'll just show you a bit more closely if I can. I've kept the ends similar so that when I come to match up the seam to join it up, it will match, but I've put some little bits and bobs in the middle, and I've tried to keep the pattern fairly narrow because I want to get lots of colours onto my finished article, and if I do them too wide, you know, they'll just spread out too much. So I'm going to roll this now with my rolling pin. I'm rolling in the direction of the length of my mix, so most of the time. I might just do it, actually, you know what, I'm going to give it one this way just to help join them together before I put them through the pasta machine. Okay, so these are joined together a little bit now. I'm going to risk putting them through the pasta machine, and I'm going to start off on a thicker setting, obviously, to settle them down, and I'm going to work all the way until I get to number 3. So there's the first pass, and that's on 0. And put it up to number 1 now, I think, and I'm going to fold my clays over like that. They won't be completely in line, but they will still be kind of similar. That didn't struggle too much on number 1, so I'm happy with that. And it's looking like it's going to be big enough for my jar, but let's try that again on number 1, because I want. Oops. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to trim this end off. If I don't have enough left for my lid, of course, I still have these clays and I can make a mini blend, can't I? Alright, let's put this through now on number 2. And now I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to put it through on number 3. And number 3 is the thickness that I want to apply it to the jar. I've now finished blending this, and actually it's a little bit more blended than the original jar that I showed you, and it's come out really nicely, and it looks really kind of space, you know, space-ish, spacey. So now I'm going to have to do the bit where I put it onto my jar. You can tell how keen I am on this bit. And also onto the lid. And I'm not going to use anything to apply this, to stick it or anything else. I think it's going to hug to the glass. It'll be perfectly fine. And the shape of the bottle means there'll be a sort of mechanical bond because it'll be wrapped around it in this direction and in this direction. So I'm not at all, you know, thinking about glue or liquid clay or anything. So I'm going to cut the end there to make a straight line, put this onto my bottle or jar, which I'm going to spend this entire tutorial saying bottle or jar, aren't I? And position this where I think it makes the best use of the colours. If I trim the bottom there, that will help, won't it? Top. And now I can get this onto here. I'm not too fussed about making the lines parallel with the bottom of the bottle or anything, but if you are, this is the time to pay attention. And then I'll just roll it on like this. The edge that we have here will make a line there, and I'll cut that off. And remember, this part is going to be for our lid. Hopefully it'll be big enough. Now, because I'm going to texture this, it means the seam here is going to get a bit of a hand in blending, but I'm still going to try and help it further by just shaping it a little, cutting it at a bit of an angle so that it's thinner there. My entirely clumsy way of doing it. There you go. And maybe just pinch this edge here a little. And put the two together. Let's make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'm just shaving it a little bit. It's just kind of cheating, and I'll give it a roll. All methods are valid at this point. But as I say, we're going to texture it, so that will help too. And then I'm going to just pinch it in towards the bottom like that. Just ease it round. We're going to clear all this up in a minute. Hopefully I've wrapped it round gently enough there aren't any air bubbles, but there usually is going to be one. I think there's one there. We'll sort those out in a moment. There's a massive one there. If you see an air bubble, you can prick it with a needle or cut it with the corner of your knife or something. Try not to make too big of an indentation, but we're going to be rolling it a little. We're going to be texturing it with that toothbrush, tongue brush thingy, so it'll hide all the little dots that we make from pricking holes. I get quite nervous at this point in the project, really. Some things that you do make you a little bit like, oh no, this could all go horribly wrong. But you just try and keep cool, and it all works out in the end. So I might give that seam a little roll with this. It's not too bad now, once we texture it. And now I'm just pinching this in. I'm going to have to go in with a knife now, aren't I? Oh dear. Okay, I'm going to go in with my blade and just trim it this far, which is not all, it's not as far as I want to go, but it'll help me to see what I'm doing. And in fact, look, there it was as far as I wanted to go, so push it up. And then I'm just going to follow this bottom of this around. And I'm just going to pinch that in. And in a moment I'm going to extrude a bit to put around there, so let's keep looking in the light. And now I'm going to trim the bottom. I've got this circle cutter now. It's a tiny bit big for the bottom there, but that's better than it being too small, because obviously we want the bottom of the bottle to stand on things. We don't want it on a bunched up lump of clay. So I'm now going to use that just to trim this. As I say, it's quite big, so I have to be pretty careful. These aren't particularly sharp, but they are good. So peel that round. I've got a sheet of instructions there which you can hear rustling, and just finish it off a little bit with my knife. So I go around and pinch that in with my thumb. Right, I've faffed around with that for long enough, and now I am going to do the lid. So here's my lid, here's my blend. I'll pick a place that looks nice in the blend. That looks good. I'll cut it out. This circle cutter is quite small for the job, but I think it's just about going to be big enough for what I want. So cut it out, and I may have to stretch it over the sides a tiny bit. So I pop this on top of the lid, and I'm not going to fuss. And I think there's a lot of potential here for fussing like crazy. But you know what? There's a word under there. There's all kinds of things. I don't care. I'm going to ignore it and just get on and put this on as straight as I can. Try not to strap any air underneath it. But in the end, I'm cutting a big star out of the middle, so it'll be fine. That looks fine to me. Drag it down over the edges, and we're going to neaten it up. I'm going to use extruded clay. You might be able to just roll a snake of clay to put around the outside. But whatever happens, I don't think I've got an air bubble in there. That looks fine. And it's hidden, that word, really. I'm not going to put it down too hard on there. Right, so that's over there. It's kind of got a gap around the edge, but that's fine. In fact, I created a gap that's in one place because I want it to match, and I'm going to extrude something that's going to go and tidy that all up. And if you don't have an extruder, as I've probably already said, you can roll a little snake of clay. That'll be just as good. So yeah, I'll show you the extruding and I'll show you the texturing right now. In order to finish off this neatly, I'm using this Makins extruder, and I think you can see here I've picked one disc that's got a little hole in the middle, which I think is a suitable size. I'm going to turn the handle, and that will push my clay through the disc and through the little hole and make a snake that is the thickness I want. So hopefully I'm going to do enough in one go to do my lid and my bottle. I'm going to risk it that that's enough. So with the bottle, I would just put the snake round in this part here, which isn't as neat as I'd like it to be. I would just tuck that extrusion in there and put it along that gap, and that'll just close that gap up nicely and give it a nice neat look. I want to do this before I texture it so that I can texture it all in, and that will make it all fit together perfectly. Apply my knife. And I would cut that at a little angle just to help to blend it. And tuck it in there like that. Right, I won't fill with it too much. And once I've textured it, you'll see it go down and sit in that gap. And I'm going to do the same here with the lid. To find the colour for the extrusion, what I did was just used up some of the clay that was cut off my blend. I haven't been too fussy about it. It's not going to match exactly with whatever bit of the lid it's touching because there's all different colours. So it seemed to me it's quite fun to make a blend of all the colours, but you could just pick one if you really wanted to and say, well, I'll go with that. Now I'm going to take my brush and, grasping the jar by the pieces that don't have clay on them, I can now go around and make a texture with my brush. and I think you can see that texture. I now texture the bottle or jar. So, and even by the end of the video we're still not going to have chosen a name, I'm sure. I'm going to texture it all over. Now I want to do this before I cut my stars out, because if I cut my stars out first, then pressing on it to make the texture could distort the shape of the cut out stars. So it's important to remember to do this first. And the good thing about this is it hides the dots where we've pricked bubbles, and it hides this seam in particular where we've joined it together. On my original bottle you can barely see at all where that seam is. Try not to rest on the table because it makes it wobble. And I'm just pressing into the clay, and it really does blend out the seam very, very nicely. I'll texturise the lid. It's a little bit harder to hold, but as long as you hold it gently, you're not really going to damage the texture too much. And what I will do is do the sides first, and then when I finish doing the sides, then I'll do the top. So I can hold the top until I've finished doing the sides, if that makes sense. So that's the texturing. And once I finish that, I'll show you how to cut out the stars. Now that this is all textured, we can go ahead and cut out the stars. And I've already made a start here. And what I did was I just went around and made some holes where I thought I would want my stars to be, just to sort of make a plan ready to cut them out. Now I appear to have gone a tiny bit crazy because I cut out hundreds of stars. Oh dear, which is going to be hard work when I come to fill them in. But, you know, it's going to be very pretty. So in order to cut your stars out, you just take your cutter like this. Sometimes it's good to give it a little spritz of water, but it's not 100% necessary. And then grasping the bottle or jar, whatever you want to call it, by the unclayed bits, you just rest this on. Now that's quite near to the other one, so I'm going to use my dot there as a guide, but I'm going to do it near the edge. You just put your cutter on and roll it into the clay, and just give a little bit of pressure into each corner. Oops, always dropping things, huh? And then using a knife or a needle tool, just dig out the star and then neaten it up to get these little bits of extraneous little bits of clay out of it, because they're going to sit in there and block your inlays otherwise. So I'll just do that again. Using this, I just sort of roll it, because we've got a curved surface here, haven't we? And I'll just make sure all the corners have felt the pressure, and then that's already lifting out. Now I want to do it quite sort of gently and in quite a controlled way, and just make sure that there's no corners kind of lifted. I'm not pressing too hard there, but just make sure there aren't any lifted corners. I'm doing it quite gently. I want to don't want to make this star baggy. I don't want to make it, because when we cut out the inlays, they're going to be a little bit smaller because they're taking the inside of the cutter, not the outside. So the last thing we want to do is to sort of roll it around violently and stretch this more than we need to, which I kind of did on the first one actually. So the first jar, the one I showed you. So this time I'm trying to be a bit more controlled about it, because later on it's going to make my life easier. And you can use little tools just to get out the crumbs if you need to. And so we've nearly finished this now. And yeah, I really went to town on stars on this one, didn't I? Okay. I might have to condition some more gold. There's all the stars on the jar. Just do one on the lid, and I'm going to do one right in the middle of the lid, and I'm going to put it right under my eyesight for that, so that I can try and square it up, and I can't guarantee it's going to be perfect. Press down, hope you can see that, and then put it up, and I'll just use a needle to take that out. And because it's got lettering under it, it's a bit messy here, but I can dig that out at my leisure. Okay, so now that these things are done, I can tidy up my tile and pop these into the oven for 15 minutes at the temperature that the manufacturer recommends for a full bake. But I'm just going to do that for that really isn't in the centre. I'm going to do that for 15 minutes only, just to harden this clay up so that when I put the inserts in, or the inlays, they're going to be pushed up against clay that isn't going to give, and that way it's just going to help it to maintain the shape of the stars. So I'll be back when these things have been baking for 15 minutes. See you now. And I'm back with my part baked goods. Here is the little jar, bottle, whatever you want to call it. Please tell me in comments if I'm driving you mad saying that. Here it is with the stars cut out. Now if you did this and you didn't want to fill these in with any kind of inlay, you could put a nightlight inside, but it would have to be an electric nightlight. It can't be a candle because that will make it too hot, and we don't want fumes. But if you want to do inlays, this has been in the oven now and it's ready for me to add my gold. The gold is excuse me, the gold is this. It's Fimo Effect metallic gold, and I put it through the pasta machine loads of times because I really wanted to smooth that out and make that lovely shine, as you would do, say for instance, with a micro effect. I've also put it through finally on number 2 on my pasta machine, which is one layer thicker than this, because I want to settle these down into these gaps and fill it up completely. As a belt and braces approach, you might want to put some Fimo liquid or some sort of liquid clay around the edges of these gaps to make sure that these stars stick into place. In my experience, I mean, when I did this one I didn't need to do that, so I'm not going to do it because it's just another layer of bother. So what I would do now is to put this in to the gap. That fits pretty nicely, and because it's a little bit thicker, I'm now going to put a little bit of parchment paper, baking sheet, whatever, over the top to stop any fingerprints, and I'm just going to rub it like that and settle it down into the gap. And in fact I'm going to do that a little bit again. If you've got any little pieces that stick out do excuse me, if you've got any little pieces that stick out like here, you can just take them out with a needle tool or something. I'm going to give that another rub because it's not very well in, is it? It's a little bit off to this side, so maybe I'll push it kind of that way. And I want to get it sort of flush with this clay if I can. And then what I did with these stars, to make them more interesting, gosh, I'm smearing it there, don't do that. I think it's good if you see something go wrong because you see what I do about it. Somebody outside is drilling or something. I'm really sorry, I don't know what they're doing. This is the noisiest neighbourhood. What I'll then do is go with my dotting tool, and I'm just going to make little holes in here, little dents, and that will help to push this into place and decorate it. And I think I tried them plain and I think I preferred them with the dents, but you may not. And as I say, if you have any doubts about it, put your liquid clay. And you can see there, look, that's really pretty, and you get a really pretty little inlaid effect. And I've got 18 stars here because, believe it or not, I made 18 holes. What is wrong with me? It's like a golf course here. So I'll do another just to show you. And obviously you're going to try and hold it by the edges, but now you can hold it between the stars because you've baked it partially. So rub that in, give it a go, have a look at it. That looks good. Might give it another little go this way. This side's a little bit not pushed in. And then you can just do that with your dotting tool and settle it in and make it look pretty. You might find other ways to texture it in, but I like this one because it's a nice contrast. That noise, I imagine you can hear it, it's so loud. Okay, so there's that one settled in as well. And I hope you like the effect that you get with those. And I'll just do one plain one for you actually, so you can see what a plain one looks like. And there it is. Now these are not perfect, they're not perfectly fitted in. It's just a fun way of decorating what would be just a leftover vitamin jar. I prefer the textured ones. And with the lid, you simply do the same thing with the lid. Because that star is a little bit thicker, the clay is a little bit thicker, that helps it to spread into the gap left behind. And of course the dotting tool helps it to spread also. Now imagine I put that in and I didn't like it. I mean, I do like it, but imagine I didn't. If I want to, I can just use my tool to dig it back out, and no damage is done. I can just have another go. So it really is a lovely simple way for beginners to do something that looks quite complicated and clever. Anyway, what I would do now is to put this into the oven for a final bake, and I would bake it according to the manufacturer's instructions. Here's the one that I made originally, and oh, the nasty sound has gone because I'm filming this a little bit later. When I say bake according to the manufacturer's instructions, this final bake is going to be a full bake. So I want you to bake it for as long as it says on the packet and not just a quick 15 minutes like we did in between. So a full old bake, and you know what? This is Fimo and should be cooked for 30 minutes. I personally would probably cook it for 45 just to make sure that it's really tough. I'm not going to put any kind of finish on this. I think it's pretty as it is, but if I was going to, I might use something like Renaissance wax, or maybe I would use one of the varnishes that Fimo make, for instance, or there's another Americana Dura Clear that I use. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, do give me a big thumbs up. Remember to subscribe so that you can find out when I'm putting out another video, and if you hit that bell button it would actually give you an update on your emails, I think. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and I love you all. Bye!